Hey, what's up? And welcome back to the Build an FU Brand podcast. All right, as if you don't know who I am, my name's Thaddeus. And if you're just now, this is the first episode you're watching, make sure you go back and watch some of the previous episodes because it's really going to play a big role into what we're talking about today. Now, in our last episode, we really started to break down some of the foundational, like the bedrock of what your brand's going to build upon. That FU brand that you want to establish, that you want to grow, you're going to need to set that foundation. And then on top of that foundation, it's all about how we're going to structure it. Okay, we want to build a sound building. No one wants to live in a flimsy shed on the side of the road. They want a good, solid foundation with a solid structure on top of it. That way they can feel security. That way they can feel safe. It's just like that. It's just like building a house. It's just like building a building. Your brand is going to operate the exact same way. And now that we kind of understand what that foundation's all about, which a little bit of recap, it's all about the values that you're brought up with, the background that you come from, the work ethic, the morals, the ethics, all of the stuff that really makes up who you are is all found deep inside of you. So really opening that up, really peeling those layers are really going to give you that information in order to use the structure that we're really going to dive into right now in order to leverage it and be able to attract your audience, grow your client list, sell more products, whatever you want to do. Ultimately serving you, your business, and your clients and the people in your world, your audience, your buyers, whatever that looks like, okay? We have to start and really leverage this structure effectively in order to continue to grow, all right? So let's start to build that one-story empire, all right? So just like a structure, just like a house, you're going to need some framework. Okay, there's going to have to be framework that comes into play. There's going to have to be a mold. There's going to have to be, 2x4s and a roof and all that other stuff. Okay, so the way you do that when it comes to building your FU brand is not just about, hey guys, let me tell you a story about where I came from. It's more about really nailing how those stories have made such an impact on what you create, who you serve, why you serve them. A real easy way to break this down is exactly what was taught to me by a man named Jacob Karras. If you don't know who he is, feel free to look him up. But what the words that he used and put into place that have stick with me, and I immediately think of it, it's who you are, why you do what you do, why you do what you do, and who you do it for, and why you do it for them. Ultimately, the who, what, why, and where. The who, what, why, and where of how you operate is going to allow people to really connect with you, feel safe in that space that you're creating, be a member of that home, that building that you're creating that is your brand. Okay, it all starts and ends with the type of stories and how you deliver them. Okay, now this isn't going to be some dull, unseasoned chicken. Like you need to create a business story, you need to create client stories, and all this other stuff. It's not like that, okay? Yes, those work. When I was first introduced to those types of stories, it was inside of a book by an author named Mike Kim. He actually runs his own podcast. He has a great book. It says "You Are the Brand," and it gives a good outline of what some of these stories are. But I want to take it one step deeper. I want to go a little bit deeper than those kind of surface level ideas. Now, the notions that he brings to the table is you have a business story, a founder story. Okay, which is basically how you founded your business, how you founded what you did, like basically what sparked it all. All right, then you have a business story, okay? And this is just kind of like what you do in your business and why you do what you do, okay? Makes sense. And then you have client stories. Obviously, that gives you a little bit of social proof. It allows people to connect and see that what you're sharing, what you're bringing to the table is not like a one-trick pony, that other people have experienced success from it as well. But like I said, I want to take it one step deeper. All those stories are super important. They're so super important, okay? Nothing beats word of mouth. So testimonials, people who have good things to say about you, those will always hold weight. But I want to go a little bit deeper on the type of stories that really build your FU brand, okay? Because yeah, let's face it, a lot of testimonials, they can become a dime a dozen, okay? And in reality, testimonials hold only so much weight, all right? Only so much weight. And that might just center around what you offer, not who you are, which could be a major disconnect. And another valuable lesson that I was taught is that whatever you have to offer and whatever your brand is, they need to coexist, almost like an infinity symbol. It's like it's never ending. They need to overlap in a fashion that allows people to both connect with who you are and what you offer as a real personal connection. And again, if you building a brand is literally all about building that personal relationship with you and your audience, allowing them to see themselves in you, be able to connect with who you are, what you stand for, what you're about, all that jazz. Okay, so let's back that up and really dive deep. Okay, so, a variation of the founder's story, as Mike Kim calls it, I think is more in line with superheroes. Maybe that's just my, Gen X slash millennial background, but I was really big into comics. I was a huge comic fan. I loved comics, not just because of like the really badass superpowers that they have, but also their origin stories. And that's where you're going to come in. The origin story. Those origin stories in comic books, they were super fascinating. They allowed you to really connect with basically a cartoon and on a graphic novel. They allowed you to connect with Wolverine, who is, a dude who's completely covered in adamantium and was basically Mr. Indestructible, who's got big claws. Yeah, that's a super cool and super badass superpower. But like, who are you? Like, why should I connect with you? How did this happen to you? What was that life like for you? And because of that backstory, that origin story that they shared around that particular character, we'll just use that as an example, it allowed me to really invest into who he was, the attitude that he brought, the swagger that he brought. The same thing applies when it comes to your personal brand. In order to build an FU brand, your stories are going to have to be very much like that. Now, I'm not talking about made up or, hyperbole or, exaggerations, but really kind of giving that picture of what it was like, that origin story. And here's a quick example, and I won't take up too much time sharing my story, but my story started well before I even made my first dollar online. It started well before I even invested my first dollar into learning the skills to build a brand, to build a business, to create offers, to sell products online. It started way before that. It started almost 7 years prior to me even investing one single cent. And here it is. So it was about 7 years in, I had finally pulled the trigger and decided, hey, I'm going to go get a 9-to-5 job. Spent my entire first 15, 20 years in the workforce, working at bars and restaurants and kind of living that kind of like nightlife type atmosphere. I was, living young and free, but thought that the better structure of a 9-to-5 was going to suit and be able to take me where I wanted to go. But then 7 years later, only found out I was on that pathway to work into the very day I died. Never seeing retirement, never being able to enjoy life, that dream of living my golden years as a I guess as an old person who's taking cruises and doing all stuff old people do was never going to be a thing for me. I was literally going to have to work until the day I died, which set me on a path. Set me on a path of learning, set me on a path of trying to do something different. It also set me on a path of personal development, set me on a path that changed my life, changed who I was. And if you want to know anything about me, I was that type of person that ultimately I didn't think people changed. I would have died on that hill. If you had talked to me 5 years ago, I would have fought with you until we were both dead on the simple fact that people don't change. But lo and behold, here I am, a completely different person than I was only 3 years ago. Now, like I said, this all started before me. Now, that sounds like a really kind of dry, I don't know why I'm speaking like that. It sounds kind of like a dry story to tell, but let's sharpen it up a little bit. And this is where it's really come into effect when it comes time for you to tell your stories. Okay. It all starts with the climax. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how we tell stories as individuals in the first place. We don't start with, it was a dark, stormy night in the middle of September. We start with the climax. Same way that you would tell a friend or a family member or a coworker your story. You're going to start with what happened, that big, impactful moment. For me, it was waking up one Saturday, realizing I was on a path to work until the very day I died, me and my wife. And it crushed my soul as I sat there sipping coffee, sitting in my robe, watching television, completely crushed with the simple notion of, hey, this is all there will ever be. And that was something that did not sit well with me. It weighed on my shoulders like 2 tons of bricks. And it set me in motion to do something about it. Rather than being crushed by that weight of this path that I felt like I was stuck on, I made a decision that started with the foundation of trying not just to save myself from this path, but save my wife as well. And because of that, I decided to do something I normally wouldn't have done, which is spend money on myself. I didn't believe in online courses. I didn't believe in coaches. I didn't believe in information, having to pay for information. Because, hey, if I want to do something, I could Google it. But here I was doing something completely out of the norm. And at the time, I had zero social media. So I was starting from bare bones scratch. But I knew because of that dreary feeling, that feeling of feeling stuck, was something that I could not sit by and try to swallow it down like a pill that's too big to fit down my throat. I had to do something about it rather than choking on the reality that I was facing each day. And that set in motion a whole whirlwind of stuff. That's the founding. That's how the foundation started. That's what my story is rooted in. Yours may be a little bit different, but it starts by where did this origins begin? Start with the climax of your story each and every time you want to share it. And don't worry, you will be repetitive in this. You will share that story so much that it becomes like second nature, that you can regurgitate it without even having to think about it. Now, and that's a good thing because your brand is supposed to be repetitive. It's not a one size, one statement, and then boom, everybody knows about it. You will constantly have to be retelling your stories. So this origin story, look back at why you're watching this podcast. Why are you doing what you're doing online? Think back and think about that catalyst, that climactic moment that sparked the origin of your journey that you're on. What did that look like? What did that feel like? Get real serious and specific about it. Don't feel like being too detail oriented. You can always fine tune it as it goes, but lay it out there. Start sharing it with people. It doesn't matter who it is. Let people hear that story because you will notice that people will become affected and impacted by the story that you're sharing. And then the more the impact you can have, the more influence you can have, the more connection you can create, the more of a rabid fan base that you will build around your FU brand. Now, that's just one story. That's your origin story. Now, you also will have, your business foundation. Why you created the business that you did the way you did it. For me, it was no sales calls. For me, it was no spending money on ads. For me, it was all about genuine, authentic connection to serve someone else. It wasn't purely based around, hey, how much money can I make from this person? It was all about how can I serve this person to the highest and be rewarded for it. For you, it might be different. For you, it might be something completely different. But think about that climactic moment. And we're going to start to unpack a few more of these stories as we move through these next few episodes. So definitely stay tuned. But think back, go back to episode 2. Look back at some of the values, some of the foundations, some of the background of what has led you to this point in your journey, in both life and in business, and your brand journey. And if you're brand new, I want you to think back, what was that moment? What was that climactic moment? And start jotting that story down. And then over these next couple of episodes, we're really going to unpack how to fine tune it, how to shape it, and how to deploy it on a repetitive basis without being repetitive. That's going to be real key. Even though we do this on repeat, the last thing we want to do is just copy and paste the exact same story over and over and over. What we want to be able to do is find the layers in it that will hit our audience in different points and different, what do they refer to as? Different psychographics within our audience. And if you don't know what psychographics are, we'll unpack that as well. So that's going to wrap it up for today. I know we've been rocking a little bit longer than we normally do, but I hope this was helpful. Go out there, figure out what your origin story is. Figure out where it all started. What was that climactic moment, that big bang, if you will, and that has evolved into something that you're doing today. In the moment you start to share that, start putting content out, start creating videos, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, Facebook, whatever that looks like. The more you start to share it, the more people can start connect with it, even if you don't think like anybody's listening. So we're going to wrap it up. That's going to be the end of episode 3, and we'll see you back here next week for episode 4 as we start to unpack more of your stories and how to fine tune them in a fashion that is going to be easy to repeat and easy to digest for your audience. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time.